I've been looking for you for 45 years. David Mitchell's voice cracked with emotion as he stared into the face that was exactly like his own in the middle of the Elvis concert audience in Memphis. The 45-year-old accountant had been searching for his identical twin brother since he was old enough to understand that something was missing from his life, and now Daniel Carter stood before him, tears streaming down a face that mirrored David's perfectly. They'd been separated at just 2 days old and raised in different cities, but fate had brought them together through an Elvis fan club post that said simply, "Searching for my twin brother born January 8, 1978, Memphis General Hospital." What made this reunion even more extraordinary was the date of their birth, the same day as Elvis Presley, 43 years later. And when Elvis witnessed this incredible twin reunion happening right in his audience, what he shared about his own twin brother Jesse Garon, who died at birth, would create a moment of healing that honored both the joy of living twins reunited and the eternal love for a twin who was lost forever. But to understand why this moment would become one of the most powerful testimonies to the unbreakable bonds between twins, you need to know about two men who spent their entire lives feeling incomplete, and how their shared love of Elvis Presley became the bridge that brought them home to each other. It was March 22, 1977, at the Memphis Coliseum. Elvis was performing his spring concert series, and the venue was packed with 15,000 fans from across the country. But in Section B, Row 8, Seats 12 and 13, something unprecedented was about to unfold. David Mitchell sat nervously in Seat 12, his hands shaking as he checked his phone for the 100th time. In Seat 13, Daniel Carter was doing the same thing, both men stealing glances at each other, but not yet ready to speak. They looked identical, same height, same build, same green eyes, same nervous energy. The only difference was their clothes. David wore a blue button-down shirt, Daniel wore gray, but their faces were mirror images of each other. 6 months earlier, their lives had been completely separate, lived 300 miles apart with no knowledge that their identical twin existed. David had been an accountant in Memphis for 20 years, living alone in a modest apartment, spending his free time at Graceland, and searching adoption websites for any trace of his biological family. Daniel had been a high school English teacher in Nashville, also single, also obsessed with Elvis, also carrying the inexplicable feeling that half of his soul was missing. The story of their separation began on January 8, 1978, Elvis Presley's 43rd birthday. Their teenage mother, Sarah Williams, had gone into premature labor at Memphis General Hospital. She was 17 years old, unmarried, and facing a situation that would test every belief she had about love, sacrifice, and impossible choices. When the twins were born at 2:47 and 2:52 a.m., healthy but small, Sarah held them both and named them David and Daniel. For 2 days, she tried to figure out how to keep them both. She was working part-time at a diner, living with her grandmother, and had no support from the baby's father, who had disappeared when she told him she was pregnant. The social worker, Mrs. Patricia Henderson, had been gentle but realistic. "Sarah, honey, I know you want to keep both boys, but you're barely making enough to support yourself. We have 2 wonderful families waiting, the Mitchells in Memphis and the Carters in Nashville. Both desperately want children and can provide everything these babies need. But they're twins," Sarah had whispered, looking at her identical sons sleeping side by side in the hospital bassinet. "They've been together since before they were born. How can I separate them?" "Sometimes love means making the hardest choice," Mrs. Henderson had replied. "These boys will have better lives with families who can provide for them, and maybe someday, when they're older, they'll find each other again." Sarah had ultimately made the decision that would haunt her for the rest of her life. She signed the papers placing David with the Mitchell family and Daniel with the Carters, asking only that both families be told the boys had a twin brother somewhere, and that their birth date had special significance. The Mitchell family, Robert and Linda Mitchell, had been trying to have children for 8 years when they got the call about David. They were told about his twin brother but chose to focus on the child they could love and raise, hoping that honesty and love would be enough to fill any void their son might feel. The Carter family, James and Margaret Carter, received Daniel with the same information and the same hope. Both families loved their sons deeply, but neither quite understood the unique challenges of raising a twin who had been separated from his other half. David grew up always feeling like something was missing. He excelled in school, was well behaved and loved, but from his earliest memories, he felt incomplete. His adoptive parents told him about his twin brother when he was 8 years old, and from that moment, finding Daniel became his life's mission. Daniel experienced the same inexplicable emptiness. He was a happy child, loved his adoptive family, but always felt like he was looking for someone or something he couldn't name. When his parents told him about his twin, it was like finding the missing piece of a puzzle he'd been trying to solve his entire life. Both boys became obsessed with Elvis Presley's music, though neither family could explain why. David's first word was Elvis. He'd seen a picture of the king on his adoptive father's record collection and pointed excitedly. Daniel sang Elvis songs before he could properly talk, humming "Love Me Tender" as a toddler. As they grew older, both boys begged their adoptive families to help them find their twin brother. The Mitchells and Carters both made efforts, hiring private investigators, registering with adoption reunification services, posting in early internet forums, but the trail had gone cold. The adoption records were sealed, and Mrs. Henderson had retired without leaving forwarding information. By the time they reached adulthood, both David and Daniel had become professional Elvis researchers in their own right. David had visited Graceland over 200 times, knew every detail of Elvis's life, and had joined every Elvis fan club in existence. Daniel had done the same from Nashville, becoming a fixture at Elvis tribute events and spending his summers at Elvis Week in Memphis. The breakthrough came in February 2023, when David joined a new Facebook group called Memphis Elvis Fans Graceland Family. He posted what he'd posted hundreds of times before, but this time with a photo, "Still searching for my identical twin brother." Born January 8, 1978, Memphis General Hospital. Separated at 2 days old. I'm an Elvis fanatic, and somehow feel like my brother would be too. If this is you, or if you know someone who fits this description, please contact me. My name is David Mitchell. Daniel had joined the same group 3 days later. He was scrolling through posts when David's photo stopped him cold. It was like looking at a recent picture of himself. The facial features, the eye color, even the way David smiled in the photo. It was identical to Daniel's own appearance. Daniel's hands were shaking as he typed his response. David, I think I might be your brother. I was born January 8, 1978, in Memphis. I was adopted by the Carter family and moved to Nashville. I've been looking for my twin my entire life. This is going to sound crazy, but I'm also obsessed with Elvis. Look at my profile picture and tell me what you think. When David opened Daniel's message and saw the profile picture, he actually screamed out loud in his apartment. His neighbor came over to check on him, and David was sitting at his computer crying and laughing at the same time. I found him, he kept saying. I found my brother. The next 6 months were a whirlwind of phone calls, video chats, DNA testing and planning. The DNA results came back 99.97% positive for identical twins. They learned they had the same food allergies, the same sleep patterns, the same nervous habits. They both bit their nails when anxious, both hummed Elvis songs while working, both felt an inexplicable sadness on their birthday that they now understood was grief for their missing twin. They decided to meet for the first time at an Elvis concert in Memphis, the city where they were born, on a night when their shared love of Elvis could witness their reunion. They bought seats next to each other and planned to arrive separately, wanting their first moment of recognition to be natural and unforced. As Elvis began his opening song, "That's All Right," David and Daniel sat side by side, both too overwhelmed to speak. They'd talked on the phone for hours over the past months, but being in the same physical space, seeing their identical faces in person, was almost too much to process. "You look exactly like me," David whispered during the applause after the first song. I know, Daniel replied, his voice choked with emotion. I feel like I'm looking in a mirror, but better. I feel like I'm looking at the part of me that's been missing my whole life. That's when the dam broke. David stood up suddenly, tears streaming down his face, and shouted the words that had been building in his heart for 45 years. I've been looking for you for 45 years. Daniel stood up too, and they embraced for the first time since they were 2 days old. The people around them realized something extraordinary was happening. These two identical men were clearly brothers meeting for the first time, and the emotion was overwhelming. Elvis noticed the commotion in the audience immediately. His performer's instincts, developed over decades of reading crowds, told him something significant was happening in Section B. Hold on there, folks, Elvis said into his microphone, signaling for the band to pause. Seems like we have something very special happening out there. The arena fell silent as Elvis walked to the edge of the stage, trying to locate the source of the emotion. When he spotted David and Daniel embracing, both crying, both looking identical, Elvis felt something profound shift in his chest. Gentlemen, Elvis called out, his voice carrying clearly through the venue's sound system, would you mind sharing with all of us what's happening over there? David looked up at Elvis, still holding his brother, and managed to speak through his tears. We're twins, he said. We were separated when we were 2 days old, and we just found each other 6 months ago. This is the first time we've been together since we were babies. A collective gasp went through the audience. 15,000 people realized they were witnessing something extraordinary. A twin reunion happening live at an Elvis concert. Twins, Elvis repeated quietly, and those who knew him well could hear something deep and personal in his voice. You were separated as babies? Yes, sir, Daniel replied, finding his voice. We were born on January 8, 1978, same day as you, but 43 years later. We've both been Elvis fans our whole lives, and that's actually how we found each other, through an Elvis fan club on Facebook. The arena was completely silent now. Elvis stood on the stage, looking at these identical twins who had found each other through their shared love of his music, and felt overwhelmed by something he rarely spoke about but carried every day. January 8th, Elvis said, his voice soft but carrying through the sound system. You were born on my birthday. Yes, sir, David said. We've always felt like that was significant somehow, like it was destiny that brought us together through your music. Elvis paused for a long moment, then made a decision that would change not just David and Daniel's lives, but the lives of thousands of people who would hear their story. David and Daniel, Elvis said, I want you to come down here with me. I want everyone in this arena to hear your story, and I want to share something with you about twins that most people don't know. Security immediately moved to escort the brothers to the front of the stage. As they made their way through the crowd, still holding hands like children afraid of being separated again, the entire arena erupted in applause. Not for Elvis, but for these twins who had found their way back to each other. When they reached the stage, Elvis knelt down to be at their level. Tell me about your lives, he said gently. What was it like growing up without your twin? David spoke first. It was like living with phantom pain, he said. I had wonderful adoptive parents, a good life, but I always felt like half of me was missing. I'd look in mirrors and feel like the reflection was wrong somehow. I felt the same way, Daniel added. I became obsessed with Elvis's music because it was the only thing that made me feel less alone. Something about your voice made me feel like there was someone who understood what it was like to be looking for something you'd lost. Elvis nodded, understanding more than they knew. And how did you find each other? Through a Memphis Elvis fan club on Facebook, David explained. I posted my adoption information and my picture, like I had hundreds of times before. But this time Daniel saw it. I knew immediately, Daniel said. It was like seeing my own face in someone else's profile. We did DNA testing to confirm, but our hearts already knew. Elvis stood up and addressed the crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to understand what you're witnessing tonight. David and Daniel were separated as infants and spent 45 years searching for each other. They found each other through their love of music, through the connections that music creates between people who need to find each other. Elvis paused, looking out at the audience, then back at the twins. But I want to share something with all of you about twins because I know something about what it means to love a twin you can't see or touch. The arena was completely still, sensing that Elvis was about to share something deeply personal. When I was born, Elvis continued, I had a twin brother. His name was Jesse Garon Presley, and he was born 35 minutes before me. But Jesse didn't make it. He was still born, and I came into this world without the person who was supposed to be my closest companion. The revelation hit the audience like a wave. Many Elvis fans knew about Jesse Garon, but hearing Elvis speak about his twin so openly was unprecedented. My whole life, Elvis said, I've carried the love I would have given to Jesse. I've wondered what it would have been like to have him beside me, to share everything with someone who was part of me from the very beginning. I felt that phantom pain that David talked about, the sense that something essential was missing. Elvis looked directly at David and Daniel. What you two have found is what I've always dreamed of. You've found your other half, your missing piece, your twin soul. That's a miracle that not every twin gets to experience. The emotion in Elvis's voice was unmistakable now. David and Daniel, I want you to know that your reunion tonight isn't just about you. It's about every twin who has been separated, every family that has been divided, every person who has spent their life looking for their missing piece. Elvis gestured for the twins to stand beside him at center stage. I want everyone in this arena to understand that what we're celebrating tonight is the power of love to transcend any distance, any time, any circumstances that try to keep us apart. The band began playing the opening notes of Love Me Tender, and Elvis spoke over the music. This song is for David and Daniel, who found their way back to each other after 45 years. But it's also for Jesse Garon, and for every twin bond that exists whether we can see it or not. As Elvis began to sing, something extraordinary happened. David and Daniel, who had never sung together before but had been humming Elvis songs separately for their entire lives, found themselves harmonizing naturally with each other and with Elvis. The arena became filled with their three voices, Elvis's famous tenor, and the identical voices of the twins who had finally found their harmony. Love me tender, love me sweet, never let me go. As they sang together, David felt something he'd never experienced before: completeness. Not just from being with Daniel, but from understanding that their separation had led them to this moment, where their reunion could honor not just their own bond but the bond Elvis had never gotten to experience with Jesse. Daniel felt the same overwhelming sense of rightness. Their 45-year search had led them to this moment, this stage, this song, where they could sing with Elvis about the kind of tender love that transcends any obstacle. When the song ended, the arena erupted in the longest standing ovation Elvis had ever received. But it wasn't just for the music. It was for David and Daniel's reunion, for Elvis's courage in sharing his own twin loss, and for the understanding that love creates bonds that no amount of time or distance can break. Elvis hugged both twins before they returned to their seats. "Thank you," he whispered to them. "Thank you for showing all of us what it looks like when love wins." As David and Daniel walked back to their seats, they were no longer the same incomplete men who had arrived at the concert that evening. They were twins who had found their way back to each other, and who had learned that their reunion was part of something much larger than themselves. After the concert, Elvis spent 2 hours with David and Daniel, looking at their adoption papers, hearing stories about their parallel lives, and sharing more about his own feelings about Jesse Garon. He also made a commitment that would extend far beyond that single evening. He would establish a foundation to help separated families find each other, ensuring that other twins and family members would have better resources than David and Daniel had during their decades-long search. The Elvis Presley Family Reunion Foundation was established 2 months later, providing DNA testing services, search assistance, and emotional support for families who had been separated by adoption, fostering, or other circumstances. The foundation's motto, taken from Elvis's words that night, was simple: Love creates bonds that no distance can break, and music helps us find our way home. David and Daniel became the foundation's first ambassadors, sharing their story at adoption conferences and family reunion events across the country. Their message was consistent: family bonds transcend legal documents and physical separation, and sometimes the search is as important as the finding. The twins' reunion didn't solve all their life's problems, but it completed something fundamental that had been missing since they were 2 days old. They began spending holidays together, coordinating their Elvis pilgrimage trips, and slowly building the relationship they should have had their entire lives. 6 months after the concert, David decided to transfer to a Nashville accounting firm to be closer to Daniel. "I've lived without my twin for 45 years, he said. "I'm not wasting any more time being 300 miles away from him." Daniel started spending summers in Memphis, taking teaching positions that allowed him to be near David and Graceland. They bought a small house together near Elvis's birthplace in Tupelo, creating the shared home they'd never had as children. The story of their reunion spread throughout the adoption and twin communities, becoming a powerful example of how modern technology and persistent love could overcome even decades-old separations. Adoption agencies began implementing better policies for keeping siblings together, and family search organizations started using the twins' story as inspiration for families who had been searching for years without success. The genetic genealogy community embraced David and Daniel's story as proof that DNA testing combined with social media could reunite families in ways that were impossible just a generation earlier. Their Facebook post became a template for other searching family members, and their successful reunion inspired thousands of people to begin their own searches. The Memphis Elvis fan club, where they had found each other, became a model for how fan communities could serve purposes beyond their original intent. The group began hosting special events for searching families, and their Facebook page became a clearinghouse for adoption reunion stories. The psychological community studied David and Daniel's reunion as an example of how twin bonds develop even in separation. Researchers found that the twins had developed remarkably similar personalities, preferences, and life patterns, despite having no contact for 45 years, supporting theories about the genetic basis of human behavior and the special connection between identical twins. Dr. Maria Santos, a specialist in twin studies at Vanderbilt University, interviewed David and Daniel extensively for her research on separated twins. Their case is remarkable not just for the length of their separation, but for how their shared interest in Elvis Presley became the mechanism for their reunion, she explained. It demonstrates that twins often develop similar interests and attractions even when raised in completely different environments. The medical community began studying the health implications of twin separation and reunion. David and Daniel's medical histories were remarkably similar. They had developed the same allergies, the same sleep disorders, and even the same minor health issues at similar ages. Their reunion actually improved both their physical and mental health measurably. The legal community took notice when several states began passing David and Daniel laws, legislation that required adoption agencies to make better efforts to keep siblings together and to maintain contact information that would allow for future reunions. These laws recognized that family bonds have significance beyond legal convenience. Religious communities embraced David and Daniel's story as an example of divine providence and the power of faith to overcome seemingly impossible obstacles. Many churches began hosting family reunion services that celebrated all types of family connections and honored the spiritual bonds that unite people across any separation. The entertainment industry was profoundly affected by Elvis's decision to share his personal story about Jesse Garon so publicly. Other celebrities began opening up about their own family separations and losses, helping to normalize conversations about adoption, family searches, and the complex emotions involved in family reunification. Social media platforms developed better tools for family searching after the David and Daniel story went viral. Facebook created specific features for adoption reunion searches, and other platforms followed suit, recognizing that social connection technology could serve life-changing purposes beyond casual networking. The twins' story influenced international adoption policies as well. Several countries began implementing better record-keeping systems and reunion services after studying how long David and Daniel's search had taken and how much more efficient it could have been with better resources. The Elvis fan community was forever changed by the twins' reunion. Graceland began hosting annual Family Reunion Week events that celebrated both Elvis's legacy and the power of fan communities to create real family connections. These events became pilgrimage destinations for searching families from around the world. Educational institutions began incorporating the twins' story into curricula about genetics, psychology, and social services. Their reunion became a case study in human resilience, the power of persistent love, and the unexpected ways that popular culture can facilitate profound personal connections. The photography industry was influenced by the visual documentation of David and Daniel's reunion. Professional photographers began specializing in family reunion documentation, understanding that these moments required the same care and artistry as wedding photography. Technology companies developed apps and platforms specifically designed to help separated families find each other. The David and Daniel protocol became an industry term for the combination of DNA testing, social media searching, and community networking that made their reunion possible. 25 years after their reunion, David and Daniel Mitchell Carter, they legally hyphenated their names to honor both adoptive families, had helped facilitate over 3,000 family reunions through their foundation work. Their story had been featured in documentaries, academic studies, and countless news articles, but they remained focused on the simple message that had driven their own search: love never gives up, and family bonds transcend any obstacle. The twins continued to attend Elvis concerts together every year on their birthday, always sitting in the same section where they had reunited. They created a tradition of bringing newly reunited families to these concerts, understanding that music had the power to celebrate and heal in ways that words alone couldn't accomplish. Their adoptive families, the Mitchells and Carters, became close friends through their son's reunion, creating an extended family network that honored both biological and chosen family bonds. The twins' story had taught everyone involved that love multiplies rather than divides, and that finding biological family doesn't diminish the importance of adoptive family connections. Today, David and Daniel are in their 60s, still inseparable, still finishing each other's sentences, still humming Elvis songs while they work. Their reunion became one of the most documented and studied family reunifications in modern history, but for them, the most important part of their story remains simple: they found each other, and love won. The Elvis Presley Family Reunion Foundation continues to operate, now in its 4th decade of reuniting families. The foundation has expanded internationally and has embraced new technologies like artificial intelligence and advanced genetic testing to help families find each other more quickly and efficiently. The twins' story reminds us that family bonds are among the strongest forces in human experience, that love persists across any distance or time, and that sometimes the most important journeys are the ones that bring us home to the people we were always meant to be with. The influence of David and Daniel's story extended into unexpected areas of society and culture. The twins' reunion became a catalyst for broader conversations about family structure, genetic identity, and the role of technology in human connection. Academic institutions began developing new research programs focused on twin separation and reunion. Harvard Medical School established the Mitchell-Carter Twin Studies Program, which tracked the long-term health and psychological outcomes of twins who had been separated and later reunited. Their preliminary findings showed that reunited twins experienced significant improvements in mental health, sleep quality, and overall life satisfaction. The entertainment industry was profoundly influenced by the twins' story. Netflix produced a documentary series called Finding Each Other that followed 12 different families searching for separated siblings. The series, inspired by David and Daniel's reunion, became one of the platform's most watched documentary programs and spawned similar series on other streaming platforms. Publishing companies began commissioning books specifically about twin separation and reunion stories. The memoir that David and Daniel co-wrote, Born on Elvis's Birthday, a twin reunion story, became a bestseller and was translated into 15 languages. The book's success demonstrated the universal appeal of family reunion narratives and inspired hundreds of other separated family members to share their own stories. The legal profession developed new specializations in family reunion law. Attorneys began focusing specifically on helping separated families navigate the complex legal issues involved in adoption record access, international family searches, and reunion facilitation. The David and Daniel Protocol became a standard approach taught in family law schools across the country. Healthcare systems began implementing new protocols for supporting reunited families. Hospitals and medical centers developed specialized counseling services for families experiencing reunion, recognizing that these experiences, while joyful, could also be emotionally overwhelming and require professional support. The twins' story influenced government policy at multiple levels. Several states passed legislation requiring adoption agencies to provide better post-adoption support services, including active assistance with family reunion efforts. The federal government began funding research into family separation and reunion, recognizing these issues as significant public health concerns. International adoption organizations adopted the twins' story as a case study in the importance of maintaining family connections across borders. Several countries revised their adoption policies to better preserve information that would allow for future family reunification, understanding that globalized adoption required globalized reunion support. The genetic genealogy industry experienced explosive growth, partly due to interest generated by stories like David and Daniel's. Companies like 23andMe and Ancestry DNA reported significant increases in customers who cited family reunion goals as their primary motivation for genetic testing. The twins became unofficial ambassadors for the industry, speaking at conferences about the life-changing potential of genetic technology. Religious communities found deep meaning in the twins' story, incorporating their reunion into sermons and religious education programs. Many faiths began hosting special services for separated families, understanding that spiritual communities could provide crucial support for people navigating the complex emotions of family reunion. The tourism industry in Memphis and Nashville capitalized on the twins' story by developing Twin Cities Twin Tours that took visitors to locations significant in David and Daniel's lives and reunion. These tours became popular with families who had experienced their own reunions, creating a new form of meaningful travel experience. Corporate America began implementing more comprehensive family leave policies, partly in response to stories like the twins. Companies recognized that employees might need time off not just for traditional family events but also for family reunions, reunion-related travel, and the emotional adjustment period that follows major family discoveries. The photography industry developed new specializations in reunion documentation. Professional photographers began offering services specifically designed for families meeting for the first time, understanding that these moments required different techniques and sensitivities than traditional family photography. Social work education programs began using the twins' story as a teaching tool for understanding the long-term impacts of family separation decisions. Social workers learned to consider not just immediate placement needs but also the potential for future reunion desires and the importance of maintaining detailed records that could facilitate future family connections. The mental health profession developed new therapeutic approaches for reunion-related counseling. Therapists learned to work with the unique psychological challenges that accompany family reunion, including identity adjustment, relationship building with previously unknown family members, and integration of new family information into existing life narratives. Technology companies expanded their reunion assistance capabilities far beyond basic social media searching. Artificial intelligence programs were developed specifically to analyze adoption records, cross-reference multiple databases, and identify potential family connections with unprecedented accuracy and speed. The music industry recognized the power of shared musical interests in facilitating family connections. Record labels began creating compilation albums specifically for families who had reunited through shared musical interests, and streaming platforms developed algorithms designed to help family members discover shared musical preferences. Educational institutions at all levels began incorporating family diversity and reunion stories into their curricula. Elementary schools developed age-appropriate programs that helped children understand different types of family structures, while high schools and colleges offered courses on genetics, adoption, and family formation that used real-world cases like the twins' story. The airline industry began offering special services for families traveling for reunion purposes, recognizing that these trips often involved unique emotional needs and logistical challenges. Some airlines developed reunion class services that provided additional support and privacy for families meeting for the first time. Financial institutions recognized that family reunions often involved significant expenses for travel, DNA testing, and reunion-related activities. Banks and credit unions began offering specialized loan products for family reunion expenses, understanding that these were investments in family relationships rather than traditional consumer purchases. The twins' story influenced medical research beyond twin studies. Researchers began studying how family reunion experiences affected overall health outcomes, finding that successful reunions often led to improvements in cardiovascular health, immune system function, and stress hormone levels. International law began grappling with questions raised by global family reunion efforts. Legal scholars developed new frameworks for understanding family rights across national borders, particularly in cases where family members had been separated by immigration, international adoption, or political upheaval. The adoption industry underwent significant reforms, partly inspired by cases like David and Daniel's. Agencies began implementing better record-keeping systems, more comprehensive post-adoption services, and active reunion assistance programs that helped families reconnect when desired. Communication technology evolved to better support family reunion processes. Video calling platforms developed features specifically designed for family reunions, including emotion recognition software that could help facilitate difficult conversations and translation services for families separated by language barriers. The twins' story influenced popular culture far beyond their initial reunion. Television shows began featuring family reunion storylines more frequently, understanding that audiences connected deeply with these narratives. Reality TV shows focused on family reunion assistance became popular programming, though David and Daniel consistently declined to participate in such shows, preferring to focus on their foundation work. Urban planning began considering family reunion needs in community development. Cities started incorporating reunion spaces in their public planning, parks, community centers, and other venues specifically designed to accommodate family reunion gatherings and provide appropriate settings for emotionally significant meetings. The data management industry developed new standards for preserving family information across generations. Understanding that family separation could happen for many reasons, and that reunion desires might emerge decades later, companies began implementing more robust long-term data preservation systems. Child welfare systems began incorporating reunion planning into their initial family separation protocols. Social workers learned to document information and make decisions with the understanding that families might want to reunite in the future, even when separation was necessary for safety or other reasons. The event planning industry developed specializations in reunion coordination. Professional reunion planners emerged who understood the unique emotional, logistical, and interpersonal challenges involved in organizing family reunion events, particularly for families who had been separated for extended periods. Military family support services adopted aspects of the twins' reunion approach for helping military families maintain connections despite frequent relocations and deployments. The understanding that family bonds transcend physical separation became a cornerstone of military family support programming. The twins' story influenced academic research on identity formation and development. Psychologists studying how people develop their sense of self found that David and Daniel's experiences provided crucial insights into the role of genetic versus environmental factors in personality development. International humanitarian organizations began using the twins' reunion model for helping families separated by war, natural disasters, and political upheaval. The techniques developed for facilitating their reunion were adapted for use in refugee camps and post-conflict reconstruction efforts. The insurance industry began recognizing family reunion as a legitimate health and wellness activity worthy of coverage support. Some health insurance plans began covering reunion-related counseling and travel expenses, understanding that these activities contributed to overall health and well-being. Elder care facilities began implementing programs specifically designed to help elderly residents reconnect with family members they had lost touch with over the years. The twins' story demonstrated that family reunion could be meaningful and beneficial at any age, leading to new approaches in senior services. The twins' influence on adoption policy extended internationally. Several countries began implementing right-to-reunion legislation that guaranteed adoptees and birth families access to reunion services and support, recognizing that family connections were fundamental human rights rather than privileges. Today, more than 45 years after their separation and 25 years after their reunion, David and Daniel's story continues to influence how society understands family bonds, the role of technology in human connection, and the importance of never giving up on love. Their foundation has facilitated thousands of family reunions worldwide, and their story serves as a reminder that the bonds created by love are stronger than any circumstances that might try to break them. The twins' legacy extends far beyond their personal reunion to encompass a broader understanding of how families form, how they can be separated, and how they can find their way back to each other. Their story demonstrates that family is both a biological reality and a choice we make every day to love and support each other, regardless of the obstacles we face. Have you ever searched for a missing family member, or felt the pull of family bonds that transcend time and distance? Share your story in the comments below, because just like David and Daniel discovered that night in Memphis, sometimes the most powerful connections in our lives are the ones we're born with, and the love that unites families can overcome any obstacle when we never give up hope.